Yep.
All right. So, welcome to our Sunday afternoon talk. It's Sunday afternoon in Thailand. I guess it's Sunday morning uh, in Europe. So, today we're going to talk about the five aggregates. Now, the five aggregates are kind of easy to understand in because they fit in kind of between one teaching and another. That the five aggregates are actually nothing but a restatement of the four foundations, or the body, the feelings, the mind, and the mind aggregates, or the mind's objects. Also, the five aggregates fit directly into Paticca Samuppada, that five of the items of Paticca Samuppada are also, there's 12 items on Paticca Samuppada, and five of them are the five aggregates. So, what we can do then is we can talk about the five aggregates only from the sense that when the Buddha talks about the five aggregates, what he is making sure of is that the five aggregates are not ever seen as anything other than who we define ourselves to be. An example of that would be, well, I'll give the list first. The list is the body, the feelings, and then the mind is broken into three groups, and that is consciousness, sankhara, and perception. All right. Well, if you'll remember, those things are actually part of the Paticca Samuppada. The one that's the most obscure would be the body, but in fact, the body would be referred to as part of the sankhara. So, if we receive it like that, we can see that, wait a minute, this is not all of that difficult at all. It's actually quite interesting the way that things are put together. Um, Also, we can see that the main reason that the Buddha would introduce Paticca Samuppada through the five aggregates is to talk about them in the sense that if we cling to any one of the five aggregates, that will lead to dukkha. Now, let's talk about it then in the order of with the body. The body is not mine. Your body is not yours. If it, in fact, were actually yours, you could be any age that you wanted to be, any body shape. You could be a transvestite or a terminator or uh, a transitionalist, whatever they call it. There's a word for it, a shapeshifter, if you actually own your body. But in fact, Jesus had the statement that you cannot even change your stature 1 inch, one whit. You can't change how tall you are. But looking at it a little differently, you can't change your age. You really can't change your sex. A lot of people are trying to do that, getting operations or whatever, but the Republicans are really strong about, oh, no, you can't. You cannot change your sex. You might want to, but in fact, I think that it's actually more fun to be a woman than it is to be a man. And so a lot of men want to be a woman, and a few women are tough enough that they want to be a man. Then, in fact, I've got a story about that. I met someone in Ann Arbor, Michigan when I was there. I was at a somebody's house on Sunday, and she was there, and I had a chance to talk to her. But where I had first seen her was that she played the string bass, upright bass, big, um, human-sized violin, and she wore overalls and smoked a cigar. So you can immediately say, wait a minute, this lady is not acting like a lady at all. She's acting like a man. And she tried to change her voice to make it lower. And that, in fact, she was quite personable. I liked her very much. But the important thing is that she was in strife with herself because she wanted to be something, a sex that was not acceptable, to change that. And we're talking about in the 1970s now. We're talking about way back when. And so in the past 30 or 40 years, the LGBT community have tried to gain recognition and the ability to fit in with Western society, while we have a whole lot of people who could pretend to be Christians. They don't want that to happen. And so that actually has caused more conflict in the society. Now, Mikey has been in Thailand, and I think Ivan's been here enough to know that within Buddhism, there is no injunction, there's no hatred for gays. In fact, the word would be in the Thai language is katoi. Mikey, did you know that word, katoi? It actually translates to ladyboy. And that's what they're called in Bangkok, is ladyboys. And some of them are so good at it that they're more beautiful than most women that you'll ever meet. Stunningly beautiful. And yet, they are men. And so the point is that masculinity and femininity are actually culture, that you became a man and a man's man because of the culture. That in fact our behavior can be kind of anything at all, but we really can't change the body. That in fact these ladyboys really identify with their body, and they want the body to be a woman's body, where in fact it's a man's body, but they'll dress up and make themselves look like a woman. Stunningly beautiful. And in fact, I remember at one time I was in 7-Eleven, and there was this stunningly beautiful woman came walking in, young Thai woman, exquisitely dressed. And I noticed her, and then I noticed the cashier is noticing me and laughing, because they thought that I didn't know that this was a ladyboy. And so I winked at the cashiers, and that's when they really busted out laughing. So everybody knew what was going on. Now, the point that I'm making here is that we really don't have the ability to change the body. We don't really, it's not ours. It gets older, and you can't stop it. You can't be the age that you want to be. The funny part about that is that almost all young people want to be older, and almost all old people want to be younger. You ever run across that, Jesus? Have you ever experienced it for yourself, that you want to be an age different than you are?
Yeah, every day.
Every day.
Every day. My back hurts, my neck hurts, everything hurts. Just like I want to be younger. Yes, every day.
All right. So that's an important quality, is to recognize, because it's the most important one. It's the most important one is because that's the one that we get stuck on the most, and that's the one that the society pays attention to, in the sense of how you're dressed, makeup, handbags, shoes, hairdos, all of that, muscles, going to the gym. Look how much of the actual business industry is devoted towards satisfying people who are unsatisfied with their body. Body's not good enough. They want to fix it. They want to wear jewelry. They want to wear diamond rings. They want to wear Gucci handbags. They want to wear Rolex watches. Some of them even want to wear great big heavy gold chains, because they think that improves the body. With the thought, Ivan, with the thought, I am the body. So I am wearing a gold chain. I am getting a hairdo. This is the way that we look at it. And in fact, within the teachings of the Buddha, it's kind of irrelevant. This is why both the bhikkhus and the bhikkhunis, they kind of dress the same. Same robe, easy robe, but in fact, the robes themselves originated from rags that were done from the charnel ground. So you know that they would wrap up a body, and then whatever body part that was on the ground, the cloth would rot. And so the bhikkhus would take that cloth and sew it together into a robe. Nobody's going to do that nowadays. There was also those in the time of the Buddha that would wear bark. Now, I'm not talking about pine bark. I'm talking about that there are some trees. An example of that would be like a birch bark, and also the bark of bamboo, that you can take very, very thin strips of the bamboo and crush it and make it almost as if it were like a thread. And then you can weave the cloth from bamboo or the strippings off of a tree. So this was common in the time of the Buddha. I don't think that they had much of a cotton industry then, but the problem with the clothing in the time of the Buddha was that it would wear out really quickly. That in fact, this is the reason that they have what they call the katen that happens right after the rainy season, is because in the time of the Buddha, almost all the clothing for all of the people was rotting by the time of the end of the rainy season. And so this was a time when the lay people would get all new clothes. And by getting all new clothes, that means that the discarded clothing would go to the monks. They'd give it as part of the katen ceremony. And then the monks would take that extra cloth that was used by the people and weave it on a kind of a loom that was actually quite simple loom. It only has 4 sticks tied together into a square, and then they would put the cloth on that to do their stitching. The name of that loom that they made, by the way, was katen. So that's the reason that they have the katen ceremony, is because they would take some cloth and make a loom out of it. Now, however, we have indoor plumbing, we have houses that are secure, we have air conditioning and heating and all kinds of stuff. But more importantly, now we have polyester. So clothing doesn't rot the way that it did in the time of the Buddha, which means then that the katen ceremony is kind of just a tradition. That most of the robes that are given at katen are never worn, because the monks tend to like to wear the clothing that they've got. I wore one robe for well more than 10 years. All right. And that the whole point of the robe, or actually the whole point of the robe, is that it is kind of just a covering to cover for gadflies, to cover for mosquitoes, to cover for the wind and the rain and the weather. That's the reason that we have it, as well as for modesty. But that's all. And yet, look at in our Western culture how much money people have. They'll have a whole closet full of clothing. And in fact, in some circles, you're never supposed to wear the same suit twice. That's especially true for women. They always have to have a new outfit every time that they go out. Is that true, Deidre, in your community, that women keep wanting to have new clothes to wear?
I know those communities. I'm not part of it. I wear the same clothes over and over.
Right. We wear the same clothes over and over again because it doesn't matter. So if we can then take this issue about the body is not me, the body is not mine, then we can go to pain in the body, like Jesus, the pain in the body is not yours because the pain is in a body that's not yours. Isn't that interesting? It's not yours. You just don't like it. You don't like the pain. All right?
It's borrowed. The body is borrowed.
The what?
It's borrowed, like rented.
Actually, you could go a little bit closer to say that you stole it.
Okay. Okay.
That it actually belongs to nature, or at best, we've rented it. And the thing of it is the landlord keeps changing it. An example of that would be that every blood cell, not just blood cell, every cell in your body will only have a life cycle of about 7 years. So every 7 years, you've got a whole completely different body. That's why it ages. If the cells would last, then we wouldn't age, but in fact they do. All of the water changes on a regular basis, and we're 80% water. So if the body keeps changing, if it cannot be controlled, that we don't own it, then why does society care so much about it? The answer to that is they're trained that way. We are trained from our childhood by our parents and those around us to be attached to the body that we don't even own. Come on, go ahead.
Well, I'm just thinking what you say about a body is not mine, that I can see, and also pain is not mine. Even though pain is not mine, I still am experiencing it. So what does the thought of saying that pain is not mine or body is not mine, how does that give me freedom? Because I'm
that
still
gives you
pain.
Freedom in the sense that the next sentence would be, oh, I can handle that pain because it's not mine, it's not me. You see, when people see the pain as me, then I hurt. They don't like that. But we can, in fact, have pain in the body, but when you have the attitude of, oh, that's not me, I can handle that pain. It's just a visitor right now. But many people, when they have pain, they say, oh, poor me. That in fact, for people who have really severe injuries, like military people who have their legs blown off, and other people that have really, really severe pain, they think that their life is in danger. Oh, me, I've got pain. That pain is not just going to last, it's going to kill me. It's going to kill the body. And so, in fact, a lot of the pain that we have is not just pain, it's fear. It's fear that the pain is going to continue on, and the fear will, in fact, subside if we begin to have the attitude that you can handle that pain. That it's not you, it's not yours. All right, so then we can move to the next one through pain and the body into feelings. The feelings are not yours. They're just emotions. And in fact, almost all feelings have a chemical reaction in the body. And the body and the mind is either producing adrenaline or it's producing cortisol or dopamine, depending upon your attitude. And that most people in our society have been trained such that they have a lot of adrenaline in their system, which gives energy, but it also brings anxiety if you don't use that energy properly. That in fact, one of the reasons why our most modern society is all on to workout and exercise is because everybody needs the exercise just to burn off the adrenaline that they've got sitting around in their body. That's why they feel relaxed, is because the adrenaline in their system is causing the anxiety, is causing the restlessness, and if they can go burn that off, then they'll feel better. So we're talking about, in fact, a very mechanical process. And yet we all identify with these feelings in the sense that I am angry, I am frustrated, I am ticked off, I am sad. You hear the whole language is based upon the identification of the feeling with the me. I am the feeling. But when we can recognize, no, the feeling is just part of the aggregates, and that in fact, if we stop feeling like the feelings are me, which in another word would say it as the feelings are in charge. When somebody's angry, the anger is in charge. When somebody feels fearful, the fear is in charge. Now, what we then mean by that it's not the self would be then that we can take a hold of those feelings and feel the way we want to feel, because the feelings are no longer in charge. They're not the boss. Oh, there you are. Deidre, go ahead. I'm listening.
So if you say the pain in the body is not me, what is me? What would you say is me or I?
When the feeling of pain in the body that you identify with, there's the me, the one who identifies with the pain. If you don't identify with the pain, then there is no self. In fact, that's a really important thing that we can talk about, kind of interrupt the flow and define that. The Buddha taught anicca, dukkha, anatta. Anicca, vata sankhara, dukkha, vata sankhara, and anatta, Dhamma. Vata Dhamma. Okay, now what does that mean is that there is no inherent self anywhere. The dukkha is actually in sankharas, that our feelings are made up things, but there is no self inherent anywhere, except when it comes in to play, it's almost always delusional. So the self, actually, the word anatta doesn't really translate to self. That's another bad translation. It was made by the Christians. I think that they were adverse to actually saying there is no soul. Now, what is the difference between a soul and a self? Is that a soul is permanent, everlasting, and strong enough to resist death, and that it's also controlled by some higher force like a god or a karma machine. That the soul is subject to the karma machine, but only that. So the Buddha taught that there was no soul because there was nothing permanent. Everything is temporary, which means that the self is also temporary. It arises almost always in the form of selfishness. But there is no self anywhere other than the delusion that I am. It's a delusion that we have. It's something that we made up. But we've been making it up so often and so long that it feels real, where in fact it's not. That you can recognize that the body is not yours, and the feelings are not yours, and also consciousness is not yours. What do we mean by consciousness now? Is that the consciousness has to do with the way that humans interact with the environment, through the eyes, through the nose, through the ears, through the taste, through touch, through proprioceptic. All of that kind of stuff is sensory input, but we also have quite a lot of sensory input that's remembered in the mind. So when the mind remembers something and makes something up, we become conscious of that too. And the important point is that consciousness is not mine. Now, it's good to remember that the Buddha grew up in and had to deal with the Brahmins, and even into today we have Hinduism, where they talk about that consciousness, and also the Christians kind of believe that the soul and consciousness are one, in the sense that when you are reborn into heaven after you die, the Christians at least will have you as conscious. In fact, many of them will have a body. When you have the image of heaven and people walking around in heaven, they're walking around in some sort of spiritual or heavenly or actually meat and flesh and bone body, because that's all a delusion that we have of who I am. We don't see ourselves in heaven as some spooky, mystical apparition, a ghost floating around in space in heaven. We have the idea that there's a body there. Now, one of the things that we can really understand easily about consciousness is that it's not permanent. It's not the soul. That in fact, when you go to sleep at night, your consciousness wanes. You can take a nap and you've got no consciousness. Another way to look at it is that when you have ear consciousness and listening to something closely, you have very little eye consciousness, or none at all. That it kind of switches from one to another, which means our consciousness is fluid. It doesn't exist all at one time. There's no one thing like a soul that would be consciousness. Go ahead, Dietrich.
Yeah, if what I consider as me or I is the way you describe it, then I'm really curious, how do I decide? Who decides? Because if I feel pain, then I decide to do something about it. There's a reaction, I don't want it. So I take a paracetamol or I do something about it.
All right.
And then sometimes it goes away. Who decides that?
Well, that's a wrong question. Let's look at it. Let's look at it in this sense. In the sutta, actually, it's not in the sutta. It's in a later piece of work called the Visuddhimagga, where there is a passage that says, "There is walking, but no walker be." Just walking. Okay, so there is consciousness, but there is no being that's conscious. There's just consciousness within the body, but the body has no being in it. It just has life. It's a life force. So consciousness then is not me, though we almost always think of I see, where in fact, no, it's just a process that's going on. So you could also take it into our practice of anapanasati in the sense of being able to look and see the unwholesome thoughts. And so we then decide or believe that there's some observer that can observe the thought. But a more correct way of looking at it, according to the Buddha, is that there is observation, but there is no observer. Just like there is clinging, but there's no clingor. Or if you've watched Star Trek, there's no Klingon. There's just clinging. But it's not you that's clinging. It's just clinging. That's part of a process. So, with
actually only the action is only the doing, or what is happening is that is what is.
That's the action, okay? And the action then is the word in the Pali. The action word is karma, or in Sanskrit, karma. okay, that in fact almost always in the West we think of karma as the result of action. Like I see it on YouTube quite often when they'll say, instant karma, right? That they swerved out and then they roll their car over, and they'll say, okay, so the rolling of the car over is the karma. No, that's the result of the action of whipping the steering wheel. Okay, so karma then is action. And when we begin to notice, and I use the word we here to make sure that it's not a self, a collective self of we, but rather that's the way that we use language. So when one has the choice about what actions we're going to take, that's where Bhikkhu Buddhadasa talks about it is that if you continue going according to your habits, according to your old plans, then that's your own old reactions. You probably heard it expressed this way. We react, but we also have the possibility with wisdom to respond. And normally we react. We don't take the time to really look and recognize that we've got a choice. And so responsiveness is always a choice, but reaction, there's no choice in it. It's just an old reaction, just doing the same karma over and over and over again, kind of mindlessly. And so what the whole practice then of the Buddha is that you are not that action. You are not the karma. You are not even the body that does the action. You're not even the observer that observes the action. All of that stuff is just merely a process. And part of that process has the delusional quality of it as me. And Bhikkhu Buddhadasa says there is really nothing is worth clinging to as I, me, or mine. Now, there's a difference between clinging to things that you choose to cling to because you can see that they're wholesome, as opposed to mindlessly clinging to things that wind us up in dukkha. So, Kawan, go ahead.
Well, my thing is, why is the sense of self so strong when it is not even not real? I mean, with me and I think with most people, the sense of self is very strong.
It is. It really is. It's built into our DNA when we're born, and then it's reinforced over and over again by our environment. Let me say that again. It's built into the DNA. It's built into our instincts. But if we did not have that instinct of self, humanity probably wouldn't have survived.
That's my also think. So it is for good. It is for something good. Otherwise, it would not be in the DNA.
Well, let us say that the DNA was developed a long, long time ago. When we were jungle bunnies, when we were even not human yet, that we still had this self-preservation instinct. It's built in as our instincts. It's part of the DNA. Now, the instincts, there's 4 primary instincts. The Buddha, by the way, calls these underlying tendencies. I was really blown away one time when I was at White Greensboro, when I read a passage in, I think it's Sutra number 123, but I'm not sure now, where it dawned on me that the internal or the underlying tendencies that the Buddha was talking about actually map onto our 4 primary instincts that modern Western science has discovered. And what are those instincts? The first one and most important and primary one is the self-preservation instinct. So, the example would be that little Johnny is chasing his ball right out into the road, and he's not looking at what's going on. He's just chasing that ball, and Mommy yells at him because her instincts are enforced where Johnny is ignoring what's going on. He does not see the danger. But by mommy yelling at him, that kicks in that into gear, that self-preservation instinct, so that next time he's not so likely to run out right in the road. He's going to at least pay attention to whether there's any traffic or not. Okay, so another one would be that we've got self-preservation instinct for certain kinds of animals. Probably the most striking and powerful one is of snakes. That we have aversion to snakes, even if it's just a piece of paper. We see that snake drawing, or to see the photo of a snake, and we respond to it the same way that we would respond. I was actually in Roswell, New Mexico, when I was a child, way back when, and there was a sort of roadside menagerie museum kind of place. And one of the things that they had was a rattlesnake that was in a glass case. And that the joke is they will give you $1 if you can hold your hand against the glass while the snake strikes, because it cannot strike right through the glass. And when the day that I was there, I watched several people try to perform that, and no one could hold their hand still and watch that snake strike their hand, knowing that there was glass between it. In other words, they were all rationally understanding that the glass was there, but the instinct wanted to withdraw the hand in fear. So this is the instincts. Now, what we're actually talking about then in the practice of Anapanasati and the teachings of the Buddha is that we can, in fact, take control of our instincts. That most people let their instincts drive their life. Their instincts is, in fact, where the feelings come from mostly. It's instinctual, it's built in, and is highly supported then by our society. And so, and by the way, that primary instinct has secondary instincts. They go in the order of procreation. Now, procreation in the Western mindset, basically because of Christianity, they immediately think of sex. But basically, the procreation instinct is to make things that will protect the self. Babies, in the old days, you wanted to have children because you wanted the tribe to take care of you. But we also make axes and even cell phones. We have cell phones as a protection mechanism. That's the procreation instinct. The next instinct is the nesting or the herding instinct, that we're social animals. Now, here's an interesting thing. Primitive life, like reptiles, don't live birth their young, and they don't take care of the young. For instance, turtles come up onto the shore, lay their eggs, go back, and the eggs are on their own to hatch and to make it to the ocean. Turtles have that instinct to head for the ocean when it pops out of the shell. The same thing is with snakes and alligators and all kinds of things, but mammals give live birth and then they tend to and take care of their young. This is now the beginning of the instinct called the herding or the nesting instinct, that we want to have a nest, we want to have a home, we want to be around other people. That in fact, if you're a bunch of wildebeest that are just mulling around in an area and a lion comes and one of the wildebeest sees it, immediately because of some sort of communication, the wildebeest are going to be circling in a tight herd. And the ones that are in the middle of the herd are the most safe. But the ones in the middle of the herd also are the ones that are most dependent upon that herd, in the sense that they've got no choice. If you're in the middle of the herd, you've got no choice. That's what we have in human society would be called a mob. and the ones who were on the outskirts of the herd are the ones that are in most danger, but they're also the ones that are most free. And so we have that instinct built in. In fact, that instinct, the Buddha gives a nice nod, a hello to it, in the sense that this is what is Sangha. Sangha is a collection. It's our herd. It's our tribe. It's our family. But with Sangha, we have the choice of who is going to be in our herd, who is going to be in our tribe, because we have wisdom to choose. Now, when we're young, we don't have a choice to choose family. Then, in fact, we're supposed to take care of our family for the rest of our life. But when a man becomes a bhikkhu, he leaves his family and goes and stays with nobles. All right, so that's the third instinct. And you can see that it can be of a benefit as well as a nuisance, depending upon your wisdom and your ability to control it. The fourth primary instinct is territory. Now, dogs see territory as a piece of land. They go around pissing and marking it, doing doo-doos and all kinds of things to define what their territory is. But humans, through our, not evolution, but through our training in our society, have changed that that instinct, that territorial instinct, into intellectual, in the sense of my territory is now what I know. I am an engineer, means that I'm in the territory of engineers. We also see it in the sense of dress, that the guys who are wearing turbans are not in my territory, they're not in my herd. And so while the nesting instinct draws us together, the territorial instinct breaks us and cuts us apart. And so we go into various distinct tribes, seeing that the other tribe is dangerous. What that means really is not that it's dangerous, it means that I do not know it, and therefore I assume that it's danger because that's the safe way out. So those are the four primary instincts, and you can see that each one of these instincts is you when you're not paying attention to it. When the instinct is in charge, that's who you are, is that instinct. But when you are wise, when you wake up, you can see that you can, in fact, take control of those instincts so that you can feel the way that you want to feel. So when you see that guy with the turban, you can say, oh, that's interesting, it's a turban. But people who have never seen a turban before, like in South Carolina or Georgia or someplace, and somebody comes around with a turban, where's my rifle? Where's my gun? I got to protect myself. That guy's foreign. This is part of the reason, then, as to why religions hate one another. The Hindus hate the Muslims, and the Muslims hate the Hindus, and everybody hates the Jews. That's out of a song. But it's the point is that we collect together in a herd, and then we separate out all of those who are not in the herd, and the ones who are in the herd are good, and the ones who are outside of the herd are dangerous. So long as we are operating with instincts. However, when we start operating with wisdom, we can change that. So you can see then that personality, who I am, for most people, is actually defined by our instincts. You are what you never changed. You are what you grew up to be. But if you start practicing anapanasati, if you start practicing the Eightfold Noble Path, you can start seeing how much of this instinctual stuff that comes up is unwholesome. It's inappropriate. That most of the self-preservation instinct stuff that we have came to us before we were human. That whatever species we were before we were human, they're the ones who were out in the jungle, and they're the ones who developed the DNA that was passed down to us and that most people continue to live that way. Probably the easiest way that you can see it is that the jungle was dangerous, and so we built villages, put walls around our town, and the next thing you know, we've got cities. And what do we call a city? A concrete jungle. We're still afraid that our instincts didn't stop the fear. We're still afraid. So actually the primary emotion, the self-preservation instinct, is the language of fear. And so by taking over that instinct and saying that instinct, that self-preservation instinct, is only trying to preserve a self, it's not me. And I do not have to behave according to the instinct. Okay, you can actually say that the instincts is part of the Sankara. That's the reason that I've been spending so much time on instincts, is because that's part of the five aggregates. And it's not me, unless I'm not paying attention to it and the old DNA kind of takes over. So, where does the self come from? It comes from trying to protect the self from danger, and most of the time, there really is no danger. There's no danger. Can we start operating like there's no danger? When somebody insults you, that doesn't mean that even if you use the word attack, they're not attacking you. In fact, almost all the insults that folks get now is from somebody that's in the internet, nowhere around you. And yet we feel attacked. Why is that? It's because of that self-preservation instinct. You say something and he doesn't like it, and he responds on the internet and trashes you, and then you feel bad and you want to respond to him and talk back to him and tell him that he's wrong. Why? Because we're trying to protect the self. Instead of just brushing it off, he doesn't know me, he doesn't know what I'm talking about. He's off in his own world. He's, in fact, operating by instinct. There's no reason that we should operate by instinct just because people on the internet are operating by instinct. That's why when people hear something new, they don't like it. They want to cling to and hold to what they already know, and that's the instinct of the territory. That guy's speaking out of my territory. The example would be, here I am, a gamer, and I'm on a game Discord group, and somebody comes in and says, Dhamma, I got to trash that guy because he's not in my territory. Have you noticed that, Ivan?
Yeah, a lot.
A lot. And so that's where the bad feelings come from. It comes from our inattention to pay for our instincts. Now, there's another quality of instincts, and that is a great big bucket of memory. That's also Sankara. It's our whole pile of junk. And guess what? You are not your memory base. You are not your instincts. You are not your feelings. You are not the body. You're not the consciousness. And the last one on the list, you're also not your perception. Now, what is perception here is when we take consciousness as input, scrape a whole bunch of stuff out of Sankara, and put together a story. This is where the five aggregates actually become part of Paticca Samuppada. The actual sequence of events is that we see something, and then we try to perceive it in order to understand it. And the way that we make sense out of it is by going into our instincts, going into our stored memory system to come up with a solution that we can understand. And many times the people will come up with the understanding, he insulted me. He trashed me on the internet. And then that's what impacts us. And so that's what we have as feelings. And the feelings then are quite natural in the sense that they are not well controlled, which means then that we feel according to the story that we make up. And the story that we make up is based on these aggregates of the body, the feelings, consciousness, Sankara, which is part of the DNA, and actually DNA is part of the Sankara, and the perception, which is our storytelling system. And your perception is also not you. So all five of these aggregates are not who you actually are. Who you actually are, in fact, the best definition I can give, well, who am I actually? The answer to that is a moving target. It's the self is actually that which does change. And what does it change? It changes from fear to anger to sadness to brilliance to genius to stupid. All of that kind of stuff is the results of the story that we've told ourselves. You could also call it conception or concepts. So our conceptual system, and so what we do is we perceive or we make up a self. That's me. Where in fact, much more of it is, if you really look at the body is just one great big electrochemical machine. That's all we are. It's just an electrochemical machine that's liable to go anywhere and all over the place. And that going is then defined as the self, the one who goes, the one who observes. We are the walker. We are the one who clings, but that's just a deception. This is why the Buddha talks about these five aggregates. If you can see individually each aggregate is not me, then who is me? The answer is it's the interplay of these five aggregates, but they don't keep interplaying in the same way. If we do, we create a destiny, but that destiny can be changed. It's not fixed. You're not stuck with it. You can change your personality. That's the heart of the teaching of the Buddha, is that it's a change model. We are not stuck with who we think we are. You could change to something else. Isn't that brilliant? You're not fixed. So when that neck pain comes, Jesus, instead of saying, oh, my neck hurts, we can say, I can handle that. I can handle that pain. I can put some neck rub. I can put some muscle rub. I can massage it. I can move around, or I can ignore it and go play on the Discord and feel bad about what's on the Discord. I don't have to feel bad about what's on my neck.
About that, a question, if I can. When I move my attention from my neck pain to my leg pain, I feel very identified with the one who moves the attention.
Mm-hmm.
Which category will feel this movement will fall into the five aggregates?
Well, here's an interesting point. When you were, let us say, paying attention to the neck, and then you go and pay attention to the leg, wasn't it the self that changed? At one point it's I hate neck, and now the next moment it says I hate leg. And then we hear a noise and I hate noise. That's the self, is that it's not a fixed target. Well, if it's not fixed, why do we have to get fixated in hatred? Why can't we just be, let us say, have a more compassionate or perhaps nurturing, and just nurture the neck? Oh, the neck is screaming, let me take care of it. Oh, the leg is screaming, let me take care of it. I can become its mommy rather than the baby. Because you can change who you are. Isn't that amazing? That's the whole teaching of the Buddha. You are not fixed in a self. But we have the delusion that when the self changes, it's the same self. Just like we have the delusion that my memory systems, when you were a child, you had a memory. Guess what? Now that you're an adult and you remember what happened as a child, it's gone through changes. You're not the same person who had that memory. The memory has changed too. It's actually quite possible that what you remember happened didn't happen at all. I have an example of that. When I was a kid, I had the idea, the understanding, the belief that a particular tree, a pecan tree that was right outside the door, a huge pecan tree even then, I had the idea that I watched my grandfather plant that tree. I remember it specifically. But when I talked to my mother about it, she says, no, I was a teenager. You hadn't even been born when he planted that tree. But in fact, I invented that memory, probably because at one time she told me about grandfather planting that tree, and so I was there for the hearing of the story that that grandfather planted that tree, and the next thing you know, I put me into the story. So that I was there when grandfather planted a tree. The reality was that I wasn't. That was actually quite a strike for me, is to recognize that I was wrong, that I made that stuff up. So that happens with a lot of our stuff in memory, is that it's not the same as what we remember it to be. Our memories are faulty. The reason, by the way, that our memories are faulty is for several reasons. The first reason why memory is faulty is because we perceived it wrong in the first place. It didn't happen like that. We made it up. The second reason why memory is faulty is because it rots over time. It changes. We can't remember the things that we used to. That's especially true for older people. The older we get to get forgetful. And then the third one is that even if we remember it, we'll misapply it when we're perceiving something and making up a story. So that's the three reasons why memory itself is faulty. It's not the way that we remember, because it's not the way that it happened, and it's not the way that we're applying the memory. So don't trust memory as my memory. I remember, I know. Better way of looking at it, Mikey, is I'm not sure. I remember it this way, but I'm not sure. I don't really trust memory. So these are the five aggregates: our memory systems and our DNA, or the Sankara, our ability to make stories up based upon our DNA and our Sankara is perception. Our sensory input system is also not me. That's just consciousness, and consciousness is temporary. It's not permanent. If the Buddha's teaching of consciousness is dependently arising due to conditions, that destroys right there the entire Christian mentality, the entire Islamic mentality of I'm going to heaven, because it's not you that would go to heaven. That heaven, in fact, is just a concept. We just made that up. It's a story that we were told, and then we retell ourselves that story. And the real heaven is, I don't care. I'm okay. Everything is fine. I'm satisfied. How much of a better heaven can you have than you're satisfied and feeling satisfied and successful? So we can change those feelings and be in your own heaven right now. Become satisfied with the way things are. So now you can also see from this talk today that the five aggregates actually come from the four foundations of mindfulness, and the five aggregates are part of the dependent arising of events, that when we have ignorance in there, when we let the DNA, when we let the perception, etc., just run rampant, then that contact with us gives us negative feelings of liking and not liking, and feelings of confusion and doubt and worry and clinging. And so we naturally have the delusion that when I'm clinging, I am clinging, rather than there's just clinging. Because if it's I, me, or mine that's clinging, that's hard to change. But if we can say, oh, it's just clinging, we can change that. Then it's easy to change because it's got no I in it. Go ahead, Jesus.
Just one question, quick question. The movement of, the change of attention in, for example, from nurturing, from normal to nurturing, for example, this movement, the movement itself, is this consciousness aggregate, or I don't know if I explained. The shift of attention of
I would say no, it's more of a perception aggregate to begin to change your perceptions. So when you've experienced the pain, what kind of story you're telling about it? Oh, poor me, my neck hurts, it'll kill me, is one way of perceiving it. Another way of perceiving it, oh, there is neck pain, never mind, I can handle that. I can lay still and just enjoy my life and not add to the pain. Okay,
because it feels like there is something changing the perception or playing with the perception. There is, this is something I feel like getting, like it is me changing the perception.
Mm-hmm. It certainly does, doesn't it? It really does feel like it. That's because we are so wired with our habits that it actually gives us that strong sensation that I do exist. However, we can begin to observe that. We can begin to observe that I'm making up a me. I am making up a me. Which means then that I am clinging to a concept of me. Yes, Dietrich, go ahead.
So would you say that the teaching of the Buddha, the Dhamma, is about letting go the concept of me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could say that you could sum it up. The whole teaching of the Buddha would be not mine.
Yeah.
So when you look in the mirror and you see the wrinkles, you can say, those are not my wrinkles. Those are just the body's wrinkles.
Go for that.
Yes, so that's the whole point is that we have strongly made up a concept of a me based upon instincts and also strongly based upon being around in our society a whole lot of people that have that same delusion. Have you ever heard the expression that 50 million Frenchmen can't be wrong? Well, guess what? 50 million people can be wrong, not just Frenchmen. Hundreds of millions of people can be wrong.
They're all stuck in their me.
And they're stuck in their me. And because of that, the me is that which suffers. But if you have no me, you're not going to suffer. You can dislike something and dislike it happily. You don't have to dislike it and hate yourself and hate what's going on. That's the dissatisfaction. But you could not like something and be satisfied that you don't like it. That's okay. You joined us late. What do you think about what you heard so far?
Yes, I'm enjoying. I'm not sure it's me, but somebody's enjoying the talk. Definitely.
All right, so you can say then there is a lot of enjoyment.
Yes.
Hearing the talk is enjoyable. You don't have to say I, me, or my. You can just say the talk is enjoyable. So, Thomas, how about you? Do you have anything to add? How about you, Emily? You have something to add? Wow, what a big group we've got today. Actually, we don't have it. There just is a big group. So you can begin to see how I, me, and my is so deeply embedded into our language that that's part of the delusion, is because we think in the language that has that construct built right in. So, Thomas, you got your mic muted. What do you think?
No, sorry. I literally for 2 minutes I popped out to make a bowl of cereal, but you really enjoyed the talk. Don't have any questions, but yeah, enjoyed soaking up the Dhamma this morning. Thank you.
Good. Good one. Ben, do you have anything to comment?
Enjoyment and appreciation have arisen. Thank you, Dhammarato.
How about you, Michael Swift?
Yes, this was a good talk. There's satisfaction. Thank you, Dhammarato.
Good one. Good one. All right, let's see who else is there. Emily, are you there? How about you, Paul?
Thank you. That was a great call. One of the things I've observed is monitoring the internal dialogue and how we use words internally. So, for instance, instead of saying "I am in pain," changing it to "there is sensation of pain." I think that itself it.
I'm not quite following you, Mikey. Can you help what you said?
I wasn't able to understand either. Could you repeat?
Yeah, there was some disturbance.
There was
I
some
was
what?
saying that I can hear somebody talking over. Okay, now it's okay. So what I was talking about was mentioning that changing the internal dialogue seems to be helpful in how we reference to um, pain instead of saying "I'm in pain." There is value in saying as there is pain or there is a sensation of pain. Dhammarato, you are muted.
We have there is just a sensation of pain, but it's not a sensation of pain, just a sensation. When we use the word pain, we often are using it in the sense of I don't like it. And it's the me then that comes in. So sensation in the neck is just sensation. Sensation in the leg is just sensation. In fact, it's not just sensation, it's often a message. Perhaps the message would be from the neck is take care of me. I need taken care of. That would be the way that we can see it. But when we call it pain and we don't like it, it's the me who doesn't like it. So, does anybody else have something to say? Ben, do you have some? Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking how you always ask us to, have a choice to just enjoy certain activities, and it really makes me think about, there's not really much me there. I can enjoy it. Like, I don't know, it's just something like that.
Yeah, just enjoyment. Raw, naked enjoyment. It's not a me that's enjoying, it's just enjoyment. It's the observation of enjoyment, but it's not me observing the enjoyment. It's just enjoyment and observation of enjoyment. It's a chemical process.
Enjoyment.
And it's the DNA, the self-preservation instinct, that starts that I, me, my thing rolling in our DNA, and then it's highly, highly improved from the society that we're in, with everybody around us also having a big I, me, and my. And then we drill it in as a big habit. All right. In fact, I'll give you one last point, and that is in some cultures, they have a party for a pregnant girl just before she delivers. What is the name of that party? It's not a coming out party.
Baby shower.
A baby shower, right, where there's no baby there, but they call it a baby shower. Dietrich, have you ever been to a baby shower? Okay. So one of the games that they have in some countries for a baby shower is a game that all of the women at the baby shower have to avoid using the word baby. They can say anything about it. They can say the word infant. They can say the word child, but they can't say the word baby at a baby shower. And if anybody does say the word baby, everybody laughs. All right. So we can now take that and say, all right, what I'm going to do in my life in order to make me aware of speech is to start using it. I'm not going to use the word I.
Yes.
That would be especially true when writing, that you could take the I out. You can also, in your conversation, you can begin to say leg pain. You don't say my leg hurts. You just say leg pain, neck pain, without talking about it as I, me, or mine. And so begin to look at your language and begin to recognize that you can take that word out. Take out the word I, me, or my. Often our language is so structured that you don't even know who you're talking about. The Thai language is not. In the Thai language, there is generally no reference to either me or you, but it's understood in context. The example of that would be going to town. In the context, you could recognize who's going to town. If somebody's walking out the door, you can say going to town, and you know who they're talking about. If you pick up your keys and start walking out the door, you can say going to town, and we know who we're talking about. But in English language, I'm going to town. You're going to town. That's part of the language that we have. And so if you can start becoming aware of the use of the word I, me, or mine, you can begin to disconnect that from your language. You can also begin to disconnect it from your thought process. And so I'll give you that as a little game to play with yourself. But it could also be said that this is a game to play. We don't need any of those pronouns. We don't need any of those pronouns. Can be said, no need for pronouns. All right. So, whoever you are, can you take this thing home?
joyfully. Y'all are welcome to join us on Discord. Like Dhammarato mentioned before, Skype is closing down, and we'd like to stay connected with you all. So on YouTube, in the video description, there is a link to join the Dhamma Friends Discord. And this coming Sunday, on the 16th, 10 a.m. Thai time, we're going to do our first, just a test call. It's not going to be a regular thing. We're just going to do a test call there, and we'd like for you all to join if you're available. So thank you.
Right. Making sure the test call will be at 10 a.m. Thai time on Sunday, but the regular 4 p.m. call that we're on now will also occur. But it'll be on Skype, just like this, no change. But at 10 a.m. Saturday or Sunday, March the 16th, will be a test call where we're going to be testing the software. In fact, what we would like to do, Ivan, if you can get your OSB working by then you can record it, and I'll record it, and Mikey will record it, and anybody else who has the software and the PC. The problem is cell phones can't record correctly. There's no software there. In fact, I think it is built right into the operating system. But on the PC, there is a program called OBS. And you can record the calls directly with OBS. So, thank you all. Hope to see you there on Sunday morning.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
See you, everyone.
Even though there's nobody here. Well, there's bodies here, but there's no me's here.
No. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye-bye.